So last two movies we saw together. The first one was Good Ol Freda. And I had no idea. I'd never heard of this movie until I got to the festival. It was one of, before each film, they play like little, a slideshow of like, hey, this film's here too.
Yeah.
And the picture on this film, even if it was just the title, I would have had no idea. It was a picture of this woman with Paul McCartney. And I was like, what does that have to do with Paul McCartney?
Yeah, like Beatles, Paul McCartney.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the film is a documentary about this woman who was the Beatles' secretary. So she was the president of their fan club, and she was then hired by Brian Epstein to sort of, do answer mail and do all that stuff when she was there. I loved the idea of this documentary. And I also, the other thing I loved about it was, as it started, she was really talking about how she was a fan of theirs before they were famous. Mm-hmm. And that really struck me because you and I sort of see a lot of stuff from people, so student filmmakers who you don't know if they're going to do anything, but you love what they're doing and you really hope that they do something great. So I really connected to that. I was like, yeah, I think I'm the first fan of a couple of people. And if they hit it big, I'll always have that memory that I can say, this person, I was there when they were sort of learning their craft. But I had some problems with this film. Mm-hmm. At a certain point, it gets into this whole thing about how she was answering the Beatles' mail. And that felt like a lot of the movie, where it was like, yes, and we got this many letters on this day, and we got this many letters 2 years later. It was this many letters, and it was like they had a card in the letter. It was like so much about the mail, and it kind of killed it for me. Yeah. I just wasn't that interested in that aspect of it. And I loved a lot of things about it, but as a whole, I think what they were trying to say was, look at how great this woman is, that she had access to these people that, everyone wanted to have access to, and she didn't exploit that. Yeah. And I appreciate that. I just don't know if it makes a great documentary.
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does. And what was just really interesting was I thought we were going to be flipped. I thought you were going to enjoy it way more than I did. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that I think I enjoyed it a little bit more than you. I would agree that there are some elements of the film that are a little, they're not organized very well. Just sort of some convictions that just didn't really get played out the way I wanted them to. But I thought it made really good use of archival photography, stuff that I had never seen before. I know you're a big fan of the Beatles, and I just
lots of stuff I'd never seen before.
And I just happen to sort of be a fringe fan of it just because of the industry I work in, so I just have to kind of know about it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the woman didn't take advantage of their fame.
She could have sold her story 100 times over and never did.
Yeah, and what I thought was really interesting about the movie is, so it goes on like the Beatles. They're not famous. They're playing in the Cavern Club, and then all of a sudden, bam, they hit big, and then something has to change to where they're on tour. So while they're on tour, she's sort of connected to them through their parents. And I thought that was fascinating, was that she knew all of their parents on a personal level, hung out with their parents, learned things from their parents, used to hang out with, whose mom was that? Was it Ringo's mom?
Yeah.
Apparently,
that's another thing that's really endearing about the film. She keeps calling him Richie.
Richie, yeah.
No one calls him Richie, but she calls him Richie. I mean, there's a lot to like about this movie. Yeah. There's a lot to like about it. It just...
The woman, there's nothing wrong with the woman. The woman
amazing.
is amazing, yeah.
She's amazing. It just didn't strike me as something that I was like, oh, thank God I saw that,
Yeah, it's a bit on the lengthy side. You get kind of lost in what year they're talking about a little bit. Even if you are a fan of the Beatles, it kind of just feels like, okay, we're hanging in, and then we're getting really fast. And it's like, there was a lot going on, But then again, that's maybe just her perspective.
Yeah.
The Beatles took off. She stayed at home. She wasn't in the thick of it, so maybe that wasn't done intentionally. And the other thing I appreciated was that it was a great mix of music. It didn't only use Beatles music.
What I noticed was it used like 3 or 4 Beatles songs, not a lot, but what it did was it would use a song the Beatles wrote, but it used the cover version, like someone else's cover, or it used like the original recording of a song they covered.
Right, or something influenced. Yeah. And that's what I thought, because it could have just been full of Beatles music, and I'm sure they would have paid a lot for that.
Yeah.
But I think that was an interesting way of getting around that, perhaps, that issue of we don't have a lot of money to make this movie, but we still want to convey the overall sense of, what the Beatles were and stuff like that. And, and you said this to me, and I'm not sure when, you're like, well, why didn't they interview Paul McCartney and Ringo? And it's like, when you said that, I immediately said, well, maybe they just didn't have access to him, or maybe they couldn't afford to. But then I started thinking, this is a time capsule. The only time you ever jump back into reality is in her world.
Yeah.
She probably doesn't talk to Paul or Paul or Ringo very often. Obviously, she doesn't talk to the other two because, they're gone.
Yeah.
But it's just like, although I think that would have been interesting, like, does she still have a connection to them? But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's like, it was, and she explains in the movie, it was a part of her past that was a lot of fun. And this is her way of saying, like, I had a lot of fun when I was young. I'm not just this old secretary. Like, she's still a secretary, which I thought was fascinating. I had a very fun life back in the day, and this is who I was.
I guess I can see that, how you don't want to steal focus from her if you've got Paul McCartney in your documentary. I mean, Paul McCartney was in Sound City, and the whole film just stopped basically for like 5 minutes because everyone had to react to Paul McCartney. I get that, but I guess I would like to know if the director tried to get those interviews and couldn't, because that would surprise me, because everyone sort of talked about how much the various Beatles loved this girl.
Sure.
Or if he made the conscious
very
decision to say, you know what, I don't need that for this. This is I'm not telling that part of the story, and I would be okay with that.
Yeah, and the filmmakers weren't around. That was the thing. If they had been around, we could have asked them that. Yeah. But and maybe we can do some follow up and figure it out. But I liked it. I thought for a documentary, it was I saw a bevy of music documentaries that are all different from one another, and I was very happy about that. Yeah. So I think I don't even think you have to be a fan of the Beatles to enjoy it. Yeah. I think you could get a lot out of it.
It might help if you're not a fan of the Beatles, honestly. I don't know.
Possibly.
I mean, I'm talking about it like I hated it. I didn't hate it.
No, you didn't.
I liked the film a lot, but it was in a series of festivals where I literally didn't rate anything below a 4. Yeah. I would have rated this a 3. That's pretty good.
That's good.
That's pretty good. So I think even though it's sort of the 14 films I saw, it's probably the film I saw I liked the least. I still liked it quite a bit. Yeah. I still appreciate it quite a bit.
I think that's what I was trying to pull out of you.
Yes.
A little bit.
I did appreciate it a lot.
Good.
I guess I was just a little disappointed.
You were at a film festival that featured a lot of really good movies.
Yes.
That's going to happen. Yeah. Somebody's going to get thrown underneath the bus, maybe just their foot. Yeah. Yeah. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.